The day you
with
flew.
bomb load and enough gas load to pretty well complete a mission, say maybe a distance 3,200, 3,500 miles away. The B-52s, this is something to me, still flying. Some of them babies are over 40 years old. I'm sure
Oh, yeah.
they're not taking a 40-year-old anywhere near around that old a plane into, say, a combat area. But the planes, that later model B-52s, are the ones, incidentally, are named 305th, under the 305th Command, named after my group. My group flew. You mentioned in there, we trained, we were told we were going to Saipan. Saipan is right 1,000 miles from Japan.
Right.
After we finished the European operation, we was on our way when we went to Iceland, finished that mission, I'll say that mission, I mean that assignment, known as Casey Jones. You can mention, it's been mentioned, Casey Jones.
Was the assignment.
Yeah, photographing all that area and all that. I mentioned in there. I'm going to say the best part of it all, till last. Now I'm going to drop back to about 2 weeks before we went to Iceland. It only took 2 weeks. Could have done it a lot earlier if it wasn't for that tight winter. There in Iceland, all light planes, you had indentations in the revetments, and sometimes just out on a broad concrete slab, it would be maybe 1,000 by 1,200 feet square. But it would have about 1 inch reinforcement concrete rods down in these indentations before you left your plane, your light planes. We didn't have that problem with the bombers because it was so much heavier. You tied that plane to it because of these.
Oh,
You could get a 60. You could get an 80-mile, let's call it a puff of wind. And then maybe after that or before that, you had a snowfall, or it would sleet. And maybe you would have an inch or so ice covering the whole thing. Well, this is why they had, it's under the direct influence of the Arctic Circle. Now, an interesting thing about that is, you know, my outfit, we screwed up, but it was for our own curiosity. It didn't hurt nobody, and I'm sure they knew it eventually back at the base. It'd be something interesting. Everybody knew about the magnetic pole. The magnetic pole does not stay in any one place. Now, I can't give you the variables on it, how much it would move. But due to radio radio and straight voice communications, you could pinpoint the magnetic pole where it was yesterday.
Mm.
It floats around. Now, you get under it, of course you know it all, it kind of would affect your instruments, your playing instruments. You know, sometimes TV, but you know, well, for a broad example, how lightning affects TV reception sometimes. Well, it would interfere with radio communication and all this, but I've never seen it come out publicly in anything. But they had a radio type system that go through all that.
Mm.
They operate with that over there now. Now, on security of that, I had the good fortune when I was working at the plant for guys in the Air Force, and actually working here. They made arrangements for training. They had to fly several hours a month. That maybe would be something like 4 or 5 hours a month to safe qualify. Naturally, that's for in case like that, they call them up. Of course, they'd get an orientation and all that, naturally,
Right.
and briefing before they would
Right.
go up on a mission or carry out a mission. No, and that's why it was really educational. I made one trip on that flight photography
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, up in
mission that one day. Yeah, I went up
Right.
in there, and I happened to have, looking back now, the good fortune of us going under where and close to the magnetic pole. Or you could fly around in wide circles. And
Mm-hmm.
now I'm sure a lot of that, a certain amount of that, is still being improved upon.
Oh, I'm sure.
But yet I never read of it in the papers, and I never read of it in possibly for security reasons. It wasn't printable,
No, I'm
to
sure.
put it large.
Yeah.
Now you had some other.
Well, there's one thing I really, I was impacted with when we talked earlier. And you told me that you were often one of the last people to see
Oh,
the
they
guys
talked to.
before they went up, and I want you to address that.
All right. As you go along, the flight and the operational personnel, generally about half the operation personnel, that's control tower, all what have you. And the crew, initial maintenance crew
Which is
that
what you were.
services,
Yeah.
always the mechanical crew, the crew chief, and those mechanics that was assigned to him was the last people that they verbally talked to. And of course, before they got to that stage, they would come through, naturally after going through briefing,
Mm-hmm.
operations. Briefing is part of operations.
Mm-hmm.
They give them all the latest intelligent changes that would take place. Generally would not talk about that to us, nor would we even dare to. But we got to where, as being that group I just mentioned, become, you might say, a family group separate from the general rest of the group, because there was the last people, and I'm sure Americans might be, because these people were fully briefed. How many fighters till you meet? Sometime it might be 50, sometime expectations 150. I can distinctly remember one time, expect, nobody knew. Now see, this was just all tentative. To expect 250 enemy fighters. And of course, along with them, a lot of medium bombers. But in between them, the enemy bombers and all that, I'll cover it briefly. You had Junkers, German Junkers, known as Ju 88s. That gun was capable, just as accurate, as long as they had distance, height, and of course, altitude. They were always close in into the formation.
So there was considerable risk when they...
But when they make one hit one plane, or the equivalent, there would be their fighters or something like that around, even in inclement weather. You're way above seeing below when you're up at altitude in this bad weather. And of course, it's a certain amount of pollution, because we did not have any way to arrest pollution in aircraft like you have nowadays in automobiles. That also went through the plane, through the cracks. Remember, I mentioned, as little air could get through the ball turret. That ball turret was the gunner on a belly turret. There was cracks there because that thing could turn a 360 degrees, but it was limited how high it would come up. You'd be shooting your own props, your own plane. The waist guns, you got your wing. That plane was about, as well as I remember, about 105 foot wingtip to wingtip. He had that wingtip, the waist guns, that wingtip. The ball turret, he's under the belly, the wingtips on the side of the plane, and they're open. Never at any time would you have waist windows, because those guys were expected to be there, as well as the tail gunner. Now the tail gunner had more cover, but he was restricted. You know, he could go down pretty much close to 180 degrees, as well as up, and he had this broad range, because he's extended about 35 feet beyond the waist window. The waist window was basically midsection of the plane. The main section of the plane was the main spar, which is the wings, is under the wings, in the wings. Your fuel tanks are concentrated right there, because it was naturally heavier. Heavier beams, and then would be extended out, say, to the tail, or up beyond the power.
He's showing you.
Yeah, you had it, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so there
you can keep that to well after all this, and I can write you some more, but...
Yeah. Well, now you were telling me about one person in particular you remembered. a young man. I think you said he had a baby. And
Oh,
he was
yes,
he was giving you some things about 10 minutes.
was a pilot. Always after briefing for the mission, the brief section on the operations had a place that you could use and leave valuable possessions, maybe wristwatch.
Right.
Well, in this case, by us building up a sort of a family group like these different people I mentioned earlier, if I know you, if you up there, we've had close contact, if I got anything like that, I might want to get home. Say you're in a position to get it if I don't come back. If I don't come back, this was this man's baby, first baby, boutique. He always wore it on his label. Always wore it on his mission. So one day, but we already knew, we could tell, we knew our people. The way they act, the way they talk to us, when it was a hot mission. You even got to where you could tell some of them would be a point of no return.
That they knew they weren't.
We could tell by knowing one of them.
By the way they
we
were
did not talk about it
Mm-hmm.
or reveal anything, you know, like that. Occasionally,
You could tell.
some of them would come up to us.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hot one today.
Mm-hmm.
We had a cold among us. And it wouldn't even get to you if I knew you real well. You know, things like that. Because that was violating
You just sort
maximum
of read their body
security.
language.
Body language. That's a good way to cover it. But he pinned his boutique on me. Said, you know what to do with it. I said, I might have said something like, sure, anybody else would have. No. He said, I want you to handle it. I said, all right, he goes on about his business and everything. So we would have that, but it was his firstborn. He was a pilot. Naturally, they were a few years older because they had, some of them have to go as much as 15 months advanced training. And usually, lots of times, those guys would be guys that come out of the RO, advanced people come out of the ROTC, A&M. A lot of these leading colleges, you know. So he'd already had the lead. You about out of gas?
You got about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it would be money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I hit one of the guys, this full crew, I guess they just liked us, me and my crew, hadn't been in Europe long, and come up to us one day. These 3 guys had 3 brand new bicycles. They told us, if we don't come back planning, you get the way you do. Yeah. We don't come back. We want you to have them bicycles. Mine, how it turned out to wind up getting, was one of those people, of that 3 people off that same airplane crew that couldn't have been over in combat, say 6 weeks. Said, you keep it. I want you to have it. So I kept that bike. and I named it Alice. That's my wife.
What a story.
Now,
I want you,
you're about to run out of film there.
I want you
Yeah,
to
just
say,
about.
Mike, you
Yes.
better read this before we waste any tape.
you want me to read
Read,
this?
read from here. Read from here on down. It's the grand finale.
No news that time of day, but the base G1s had us fighting mad, and you know we didn't believe it until Sergeant Guard informed us what a birthday.
Japanese surrender.
Oh,
August the 14th, my birthday, in that part of the world.
wow.
That was the grand finale. This was 2 weeks before we went ahead and finished up the Icelandic assignment.
I see. So, what, and that was your birthday that the Japanese
birthday.
surrendered on? Wow.